Okay, I'm coming to you today with two devotional thoughts, one from Scripture, one from my 1-year book of Christian history. It's going to be awesome. I've shared this one before. This is December 3rd. I might as well read most of it. It's only 2 pages. December 3rd, 1902 marked the birth in Japan of an individual named Mitsu Fuchida, who, told in his own words, reveals the mark that he left on history and the mark God left on him. He says, I must admit, now this is an excerpt from one of his books, I must admit that I was more excited than usual as I awoke that morning at 3 a.m. Hawaii time. As General Commander of the Air Squadron, I made last-minute checks on the intelligence information in the operations room before going to warm up my single-engine 3-seater plane. The sunrise in the east was magnificent above the white clouds as I led 360 planes toward Hawaii. So this guy was the air commander of the Japanese force attacking Hawaii, okay? Fuchida. Now, I'm skipping sections, so we've got ... I'm just summarizing what he's writing here. He says, I knew my objective to surprise and cripple the American naval force in the Pacific. And like a hurricane out of nowhere, my torpedo planes, dive bombers, and fighters struck suddenly with indescribable fury. It was the most thrilling exploit of my career. With the end of the war, my military career was over. Obviously, he survived, which is probably pretty amazing. I became more and more unhappy, especially when the war crimes trials opened in Tokyo. Though I was never accused, General Douglas MacArthur summoned me to testify on several occasions. One time, when he got off the train station in Tokyo, he saw an American distributing literature. And this American handed him the pamphlet called I Was a Prisoner of Japan. And this guy read it, okay? And it eventually changed his life. On that Sunday, while I was in the air over Pearl Harbor, an American soldier named Jacob DeShazer had been on KP duty in the Army camp in California. And when the radio announced the sneak attack of Pearl Harbor, he shouted, Jap, just wait and see what we'll do to you. 1 month later, he volunteered for a secret mission, which was part of the Jimmy Doolittle Squadron, a surprise raid on Tokyo. And after the bombing raid, they didn't have enough fuel to make it back to the carrier, so they continued on into China to crash land in China. They actually crashed into Japanese-held territory, and Jacob DeShazer was captured and spent 40 months in confinement. Cruelly treated, tortured, but after 25 months, so after 2 years, somehow the U.S. prisoners were given a Bible to read. And there, in a Japanese prisoner of war camp, Jacob read and read and read, became a Christian, gave his life to Christ, and eventually God changed his heart, purified his heart. He was in solitary confinement for a while and changed his bitterness and hatred and cleared it away. Well, after the war, right, Jacob returns to Japan as a missionary, and he writes this little pamphlet, this pocket-sized testimony booklet. Does that sound familiar? Some of you, Livingstone Community Church? Okay. And he's over there, so he dedicates his life in 1948 as a missionary to the Japanese, whom he had suffered under and whom he had fought against just years before. He goes over there as a missionary. He begins distributing this pamphlet, and of all the people, he actually gives one to Fuchida, who was the air commander of the squadron that attacked Pearl Harbor, who was really high up. And he gets saved, right? And then the two of them toured Japan together for they served for 30 years as missionaries in Japan. I'm trying to summarize here this section, but here's what's so amazing. So I love the story. You can look into this a little bit further in detail. Just Google it. But what came to mind as I was reading was a verse in Revelation. Let's see. Revelation, got it written here somewhere. 12, verse 11. Here's what it says. They triumphed over him by the blood of the, triumphed over him, meaning Satan, by the blood of the Lamb and the word of their testimony. They did not love their lives so much as to shrink from death. 3 keys there. Number 1, so here's what I've done. Here's what we've done. I had this vision to put down on paper my own testimony, my spiritual journey, and partner that with a presentation of the gospel. And then pray and supernaturally labor for opportunities to hand this out to family, friends, strangers, to share about the good news of Christ and what he's done in my life and what he can do in others, right? So here in Revelation 12, it says, the saints triumphed over Satan by 3 things. Number 1, the blood of the Lamb, which is the essence of his atoning sacrifice, which is the gospel. It's the gospel message. It's the essence of salvation, what Christ has done, his death, burial, resurrection, right? So is that part of my testimony booklet? You bet it is. Secondly, by the word of their testimony. Your testimony is powerful. Nobody can argue your testimony, what you've been through, what God has done in your life. Everybody loves a story. And everybody loves when they're looking for hope. They want to know, if God's done that in your life, can he do it in mine? So you've got your personal testimony, your personal spiritual journey, partnered with, meshed with a presentation of the goodness and the gospel of Christ, the truth, and here's the attitude. And they did not love their lives so much as to shrink from death at any cost. At any cost. I want to be an evangelist. I want to be a witness for Christ. I want to get his message out of how he's changed my life and he can change yours in his offer of salvation, forgiveness, redemption through Jesus. I want to get that out to as many people as possible at any cost. Now, last passage. This was my daily Bible reading, and I just happened to be starting over. I'm in Genesis. Here's the 1-year Bible. And my Old Testament passage for today was Genesis 22. It's when God tested Abraham, but something really stood out to me. So in verse 12, Abraham gets to the very top with Isaac. He binds him. He lays him on the altar that he built. He takes the knife. He's about to slay his son. Verse 11 says, and the angel of the Lord called out to him from heaven, Abraham, Abraham. And he said, here I am. Do not lay a hand on the boy, he said. Do not do anything to him. Now I know that you fear God, because you have not withheld from me your only son. So I looked at that. I thought about that phraseology there. He didn't say you were willing, you would be willing, you were going to be willing. He didn't. It's not like he didn't put it in the future tense. He says you have not withheld, as if it was a done deal. It would have been a done deal. He knew that Abraham was going to go through with the act. Like it was a done deal in Abraham's mind. He had already made up his mind. Abraham wasn't hoping, okay, God, like at the last minute, can you stop this somehow miraculously at the last minute? Maybe the shirt or whatever, I don't know, the knife would not penetrate. I don't know. But here it says, you have not withheld from me your only son. Past tense, like it's already an accomplished fact. God saw his heart. He saw what Abraham would carry out. And Abraham, later in verse 18, God says, you're going to be blessed because you are willing to obey me. And I see here in this passage, just so happens, Abraham was willing to follow God at any cost, willing to do whatever he asked, whatever it cost. There's no idol except God was supreme, the supreme love of his life. And he was willing to do whatever it took, whatever sacrifice, whatever he needed to submit to, surrender to. And I was just thinking, like, pick some area. Is there any idol? What is holding you back from, and they loved not their lives, even to the point of death? Like, They didn't even care about their life. They were willing to give anything, all things. There was no cost that was too great to get the power of their testimony and the power of the gospel message out to lost people. And I see that same spirit in Abraham. And that's what God's looking for. He is looking for people who will be bold witnesses, who will be evangelistic in this time, who will share what God's done in their life, transition, keep everyone's eyes fixed upon Christ, and supply hope to people who are hurting, who are broken, who are desperate, who are hopeless, by pointing people to the gospel of Jesus Christ. So check out 3 Circles. We posted that video. That's presentation of the gospel. And the message, the divine gift of salvation. So hopefully this is a blessing to you today, as well as a challenge to go all out for God, and a confirmation in the life of Jacob DeShazer and Mitsu Fushida that your testimony is a very powerful tool in the hands of God. Blessings.